In this video, we're going to talk about how to search the library databases, specifically for journal articles that you can use in your assignments. You always want to make sure that you're starting at the library website so you can automatically get access to all of the valuable resources that we pay for, so you won't be asked to pay for articles yourself. You can either start at the library website, simmons.edu/library, or if you use the 410 course guide, then you can link to the databases from there as well. So the first thing I want to do is explain the difference between this library search and databases like CINAHL and Medline that you might have heard of. So this library search searches just about everything that we have access to at once. So it can be a good place to start if you just want to see if there's any information on your topic. But especially when you're working with nursing research and health sciences research, it can be really frustrating to use this library search because you're going to get results from all different disciplines that really have nothing to do with medicine or the health sciences. So it can be a lot to root through and it can be really overwhelming. So for that reason, I suggest that you go to particular databases, which again, you can get to either by clicking on this databases button here, or you can link there directly from the course guide. So we have them organized by name and by subject. So you can choose health sciences to see all of the databases that are specific to the health sciences. And these databases are really just collections of information, usually focused on a particular discipline. And in this case, this is where you're going to find the most health sciences research. So I always start with CINAHL Complete for nursing or any of the allied health fields. And if you're off campus and you haven't already signed in, you'll probably be prompted to log in. So a lot of our databases look like this because we get them through the same company. So the way that you can tell which one you're actually searching at the moment is by looking up here. It says Searching CINAHL Complete. So we know that we're searching the major database for nursing research. You can also use this link here to choose other databases to search at the same time. And you can't search every database we have access to, but it's all the ones that we get through the same company that have this same interface. So it really can save you time, so you don't have to do one search in CINAHL and then run another search in Medline or PubMed. You can just do one search and get target information on your topic. So in addition to CINAHL Complete, I suggest Medline, which is the same database as PubMed. It's just the academic side of things. So you're going to get the same information. The bonus is that you get access to all the articles that we pay for if you go through Medline, and you can also search it at the same time as CINAHL. I also like to add Academic Search Complete. So this is actually an interdisciplinary database, but there's actually a lot of health sciences articles in there. So sometimes you can find some stuff that would be useful that isn't included in CINAHL or Medline. So these are the three main ones for health sciences research. Sometimes it can be useful to add a different database. One of the most common for nursing is if you are looking at a topic that has a psychological component, like if you're looking at depression or anxiety or something like that, then adding this PsycInfo can be useful. If you are looking at an educational topic, then adding ERIC, the educational database, can be helpful. And then sometimes if you're looking at operations of hospitals and clinics, like the procedural or financial aspects, then it can be useful to add this Business Source Complete. So the topic that we're going to be looking at today doesn't really touch on any of those other areas, so I'm going to stick with CINAHL, Medline, and Academic Search Complete. Then I can just hit OK. So the good thing about these databases is they offer you very sophisticated options for searching. So you can really narrow in on exactly what it is that you're looking for. You'll find that if you're searching some of the other databases or websites, for example, if you're looking at the Cochrane database for systematic reviews, you won't see these same options and you might not get quite the same number of options to narrow down. But if it looks like this, then you can use these techniques. So it really helps to separate your search into different concepts and put each concept on a different line. And this "and" in between tells you to only get the articles that are about all of the topics that you put in here. And you've probably worked with developing PICO questions at this point, and this can be a really useful framework for thinking about what search terms to use. So rather than using the P, I, C, and O aspects, I usually just start out with the P and the I, the population and intervention, because those are the ones that really are most efficient at bringing back articles and other types of sources that are about your topic. And then if you find that you're getting a lot of results that seem really relevant, then you can try adding in a comparison or an outcome. But comparisons and outcomes are just a little bit more difficult to search for. So I like to start really broad, and then if I have a lot of results, I can narrow down. Because if you put too much in from the beginning, then you can quickly end up with very few or no results, and then that's what gets you frustrated. So I'm looking for information about patients with heart disease. So I know that it might be referred to as heart disease or cardiovascular disease. So anytime that there are multiple terms that might be used, you can type the word "or" into the same box and then keep adding them. So you could do several different here if you wanted to. I'm going to stick with heart disease or cardiovascular disease. So this tells the databases, give me any articles that either mention heart disease or cardiovascular disease. Then I'm going to think about my other topic. So let's say that I'm interested in the effect of exercise on heart disease. So I'm going to put in exercise, and you'll see that it does give you some suggestions down here as you're typing. So just keep in mind that these are just things that other people have searched for at the same time that they've put in what you've already entered. So it's not necessarily the best words to search for, but it can give you some ideas. So exercise or physical activity or fitness all sounds good to me. And I usually just start with 2 or 3 concepts, just because I like to see what's out there, and then I can always get more specific if I'm getting a lot of results. And you'll see right off the bat we have 52,000 results. And if I scroll through, I can see that the words I put in are highlighted. So you can tell pretty quickly why these articles came up near the top. And it looks to me like I'm on the right track. These are pretty relevant, so I can get even more specific. So let's say that I'm specifically interested in female patients with heart disease or cardiovascular disease. Sometimes people will be inclined to put in women heart disease or something like that up here, but it can be really helpful to just separate that out as a separate concept, because when you start to put lots of different concepts into one box, then the database doesn't really know how to interpret that. So I'm going to put in women or female. So again, this is telling the database I want only articles that mention either heart disease or cardiovascular disease, and they also have to mention either exercise or physical activity or fitness, and they also have to mention women or female. So you're getting very specific about what you're telling the database to give you. And anytime you're adding another concept, you'll see that the number of results is going to go down. But that's okay, because I don't have time to look through 52,000 articles anyway. But hopefully, by adding another concept in here, I'm going to get even closer to what I was looking for. You just hit search to rerun the search. So you can see we went from 52,000 to 22,000. So each time you make a change to your search, you just want to scroll through and make sure that you're on the right track, because it can take a little bit of trial and error Sometimes you're just not sure what kinds of terms are going to show up in the literature, so the best thing you can do is just try it, see if you're getting relevant results, and then sometimes you'll even notice terms that you didn't think to search for in the results, and you can add those to your search to keep narrowing in on exactly what you're looking for. You can also sometimes get ideas for more specific topics if you're not sure exactly what you want to be looking for. So it looks like these results are still fairly relevant. And it looks like this one is looking specifically at body mass index as an indicator. So because I still have a lot of results, I can even add another concept. If you only have 100 or so or fewer than that, then you probably just want to start looking through rather than narrowing down. But if you're still in the thousands, that's probably more than you're going to look through, so you can narrow. So let's put in BMI or body mass index. And it helps when there are abbreviations to try both. So if there's a common abbreviation, you can try BMI or body mass index, and that way you know you're covered. You're going to get it regardless. So again, we can hit search. And that 22,000 goes down to 6,000. So we're getting smaller and smaller numbers of results, but hopefully we're getting closer and closer to what it is that we're actually looking for. At this point, it might be useful to talk about these filters on the left side. So you can use these to narrow your results down even further. So you can narrow the publication date, for example. You can look within the last 5 years. And you can either type the date in here, or you can use this slider to drag it over. You want to do one of these at a time because it's going to update continually. And you just want to keep checking back to see how many results you have. So you know if you put a particular filter on and you all of a sudden have one result, you'll know that that was the filter that is really limiting your search. You can use this scholarly peer-reviewed journals filter over here, but almost every single article that's in SINALA and Medline is peer-reviewed anyway, so it's not going to hurt, but you can add it on. Sometimes you don't need to. You can also use this academic journals because there are lots of other types of sources that are indexed in these databases. So you'll see some articles from magazines, some continuing education things, some dissertations. So if you're specifically looking for a journal article, you can check that off. And then the other one that I use frequently is language. So you'll notice that most of the articles that are in here are written in English anyway, but if you're getting some results that are distracting to you because they're written in a language that you don't read, then you can check off English. You can also try playing around with some of these others like age or gender or geography sometimes shows up. You just want to take those with a grain of salt because those only work as well as the data is in here about the articles. So you'll notice that sometimes you put that on and it narrows your results a lot more than you'd think. So for example, looking for female patients or women, you could try limiting to gender, but there are some articles in here that just aren't marked very well when it comes to things like gender, geography, age, things like that. So if you put the word in the search box, then it's probably going to be more effective than using those filters. But if you have a lot of results and you don't need to find every single article that's ever been published on your topic, then you can play around with those filters and just see. So at this point, you would probably want to scroll through the first page or two of results and see if anything stands out to you. And you just want to keep in mind that it does take time to find the best resources for your assignments. So you want to make sure that you're setting aside enough time to search because it does take a little bit of time. And there's also a little bit of trial and error just naturally involved. Unless you search for articles like this all the time, you don't know exactly what to put in to get relevant results. So you might have to try some different search terms. If you're finding that you're not getting enough results or they're not looking relevant, you might have to think about different search terms that might help you get a little bit closer. The other thing to keep in mind is that this process can be very frustrating, and these databases are really not the most intuitive. You have to learn how to use them. And once you do learn how to use them, then they become very powerful tools. But they can be really frustrating in the meantime. So don't spend hours and hours and hours searching and not finding anything to the point where you're just so frustrated and done with the assignment. Try to ask for help from a librarian before you get to that point. If you feel like you're having trouble, just need a little push in the right direction, reach out early, because then you'll have plenty of time to walk through it with us and search through the results that you're getting. If you wait until the last minute, then you're just going to be beyond frustrated and you're going to wish that you had come to us earlier. So hopefully this has given you a little bit of an introduction into how to use these databases, but really the most important thing to remember is to come and ask the library questions anytime that you feel like you're having help, because that's really what we're here to do.